Hello everyone, glad to be back. Today is the 10th of September, Sunday, so I hope you have a great day and great weekend. Now it's 15 to 11 in the morning Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for the day, in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. Second update will be a little bit late in the afternoon on my Patreon page, in which I will share video that me and my family made yesterday in Moscow, capital of Russian Federation. Yesterday Moscow was celebrating 876 years since its foundation. City was in celebration. There was several events around the city where people were gathering to celebrate and to have a good time, and me and my family, we went for a walk around the central parts of Moscow. We made some video footage, and I will share that video on Telegram, on Patreon, sorry. And third update also will be on Patreon later on in the afternoon. It's a Sunday, so time for informal talks, and I will summarize previous week, and also, of course, I will share with Patreon community some ideas that I have about development of this channel, and of course additional news that will be reported by Russian media. And well, by the way, one more announcement. Sorry, intro is too long, but one more announcement. Today I may have some technical live stream. I want to learn some more how to do live streams and prepare myself. And today, later on, at some point in the afternoon, I will try to do some technical live stream. And if it works, if I will learn how to do so, then maybe I will have first live stream tomorrow. And first live stream probably will be not just about news, but also a Q&A type of live stream. Let's see how it will work out. No promises, but I will definitely try. And yes, that's been said. Let's talk about news now, and I will start with short summary of the situation on the front lines. Sorry, dear friends, for a long intro. So when it comes to battlefield, it's basically operational pause all along the front line, even though at some areas we do see some more or less significant activity of the sites. But let's go from southern sectors up to northern ones. So first of all, of course, I will share with you information about nice strike of Russian Black Sea fleet aviation on Ukrainian speedboats. US-made speedboats Willard Sea Force, and according to Russian media outlets, in this particular case, RIA Novosti, Russian fighter jets did destroy 3 speedboats of Ukrainian armed forces with amphibious force on it. So yet again, Ukrainian side was trying to conduct landing operation in direction of Crimea, and somewhere in this area, in between Odessa region and Crimea, Russian Black Sea Fleet Aviation did conducted its airstrike on these boats, and 3 boats were destroyed, and all the crew or all the landing force on those boats. And when it comes to Kherson region itself, it's as I said, operational pause, mainly artillery duels between the sides, recon operations, and constant fight for control over these small islands on the Dnieper River and delta of Dnieper River. And by the way, if you take a look on this map or any map, the Dnieper River in the southern part, it's full of islands, full of small islands. We are talking about dozens and dozens of islands, so that's why it's a constant fight for control over these islands between Russian and the Ukrainian forces. But overall situation is more or less calm in Kherson sector of the front line, and nothing is happening that influence overall situation on this direction in immediate future. When it comes to Zaporozhye and South Donetsk sectors of the front, of course, we have two main hotspots in these areas. First is Orekhova bridgehead that Ukrainian forces did manage to establish since the beginning of this so-called counteroffensive. In reality, attempt of Ukrainian forces to demilitarize and denazify themselves. That's what really is happening during this so-called counteroffensive. And of course, we have some reports that Ukrainian army units were trying to dig in even more in this bridgehead, improve their positions in between Rabotina settlement and Verbovo settlement, Novoprokopovka settlement here. And they do control some fields in this area. But yet again, because concentration of Ukrainian forces is increasing day by day, chances that at some point Russian forces will conduct some pincer movement from western and eastern flank and in directions of settlements of Malaya Takmachka, Novodanilovka, and eventually Orekhov to cut off entire this bridgehead and then neutralize all the Ukrainian forces in this fire pocket. Chances are increasing as time goes by, because even this pro-Ukrainian map clearly highlights how dangerous current position of Ukrainian forces really is. But overall, even though we have some reports that some units of Ukrainian forces try to get closer to Novoprokopovka area, some forces try to get closer to Verbovo settlement. Overall situation is a deadlock, and the Ukrainian forces are unable to conduct any more or less successful offensive operation to improve their positions and to establish control, at least on this area, on the first line of defense of Russian forces. They are unable even to reach first line of defense, which is going approximately like this map here, by the way. And once again, let me comment on this map itself. This is a live map, pro-Ukrainian map, and extremely unreliable, by the way. Not just pro-Ukrainian, but also extremely unreliable. I use this map just because of these colors, light colors that are letting me to read the map easier than some other maps do. But overall situation in Orekhov direction is quite calm. By the way, we have yet again reports about destruction of several more Challenger 2 tanks. As you know, yesterday and day before yesterday, information was circulating in Russian segment of internet based on statements of governor of Zaporozhye region, Balitsky, that Russian forces managed to destroy 2 Challenger tanks somewhere in between Rabotina and Verbovo. But I did not see any video confirmation of that statements initially. And today I did read a report on RT, if I'm not mistaken, which was based on statements from Rogov, one more official from Zaporozhye region, and he was saying that 1 more Challenger was destroyed in Orekhov bridgehead. But anyway, there's so many reports about destruction of Challengers that probably from 14 tanks, this type of tanks that the United Kingdom delivered to Zelensky and his criminal associates, at least 2 or 3 are already destroyed. Maybe more, but at least 2, because second video is circulating in internet, and I will definitely share that video on my Telegram. Second video with destroyed Challenger 2 tanks. So at least 2 Challengers definitely have been destroyed. But my guess is that number is significantly high in reality. We just did not see video confirmation of that, but it will come. But yet again, overall situation on Zaporozhye sector is deadlock, and the Ukrainian side is unable to achieve any significant success during this so-called counteroffensive. When it comes to South Donetsk direction of the front line, main hotspot is, of course, Vremovsky salient, and lately southern part of Vremovsky salient, where Ukrainian forces were trying to conduct offensive in direction of Novodonetskaya and Novomayorskaya. There were some reports that Ukrainian forces even managed to enter these settlements and establish control over the northern parts of these settlements, but I did not see confirmation of this information on Russian Telegram pages. So I will say this settlements still under full Russian control, but overall situation is quite calm in comparison to, let's say, 2-3 weeks ago, when Ukrainian forces were still quite active on this sector of the front. But lately, seems like they did run out of steam, or for whatever reasons, they are quite passive. Maybe they are waiting for second wave of Ukrainian counteroffensive to begin. Maybe, but they have a very little time left before rainy season begins. So if they are planning to conduct more or less significant scale of offensive operations on this land bridge between Crimea and mainland Russia, they will be forced to do so in upcoming days, maximum several weeks. Let's see how it will go, but right now it's operational pause. Nothing is happening that will influence overall situation on the front line. When it comes to Donetsk direction, situation is almost the same. Artillery duels between the sides, recon operations. Initiative is in Russian hands, absolutely. On the southern flank of Donetsk direction and the northern flank of Donetsk direction, main hotspots are, of course, Marinka, Krasnogorovka, and Avdiivka directions. When it comes to Marinka, yesterday I did see some reports that Russian forces establish additional control over the several western blocks of Marinka, and basically Ukrainian side now controls maybe like 2-3% of this city, maximum 5%. But anyway, they still holding some positions in this western corner of Marinka. I guess it's only a matter of I don't know, days when eventually Ukrainian forces will withdraw from this settlement. When it comes to Krasnogorovka and Avdiivka directions, main task for Russian armed forces in these sectors, as I understand, is to distract logistical lines of Ukrainian side, because as I said many times before, these logistical lines are used by Ukrainian forces not just in Donetsk direction but also in South Donetsk direction. So it's quite important for Russian side to make sure that they are keeping under constant artillery control all these supply lines that goes through Donetsk sector. When it comes to Bakhmut direction, northern flank of Donetsk front line, situation is not that different in comparison to previous days. We have some reports that Ukrainian forces were actively trying to conduct some local scale offensive operation in the direction of Andreevka. They shifted their attention from Klishchevka to Andreevka lately, and they are trying to establish control over the settlement, or at least to partially encircle. But for this moment, this settlement is under full Russian control, like Kurdyumovka on the southern side and Klishchevka. All these three main hotspots on the southern flank of Bakhmut are under full Russian control. And I'm absolutely sure, by the way, that Ukrainian side will never ever regain initiative in this area, no matter how many forces they will send and how many Ukrainian units they will demilitarize, with active support of Russia, of course. There's no way they're going to regain initiative in any sector of the front, especially in Donetsk direction, on southern flank of Bakhmut. But there will be probably some local scale skirmishes, undoubtedly, and some recon operations and artillery duels. But when it comes to initiative, it's in Russian hands, and Russian forces will not let initiative to slip from their hands. And northern sector, by the way, initiative is in Russian hands for a long time now. And as I said quite a few times, Ukrainian forces, I don't think even hoping for regain initiative in any one direction in this area. Yahidne, Berkhovka, Dubovo-Vasilievka, initiative is, and absolute control is in Russian hands, and Russian militaries are dictating basically turns on this sector, and I guess it's only a matter of time when Russian side will become significantly active in the direction of Chisovyar and in the direction of Konstantinovka, and constant missile and artillery strikes on the concentrations of Ukrainian forces in Chisovyar and Konstantinovka definitely can be received as indicators that Russian side is preparing large-scale offensive operation in this area also. And same goes for the northern sectors of the front line, from Seversk up to Kupiansk and entire Kharkov region. Even though Ukrainian side, time after time, conducting these waves, these suicidal waves of local-scale counteroffensives, in hope of to regain initiative at least in some areas of the front line, they are failing miserably, and it's only a matter of time when Russian forces that are very well prepared, when Russian forces will conduct large-scale offensive operations. If we did not see Russian offensive in next 2-3 weeks, then I guess this offensive will take place in the winter, because this rainy season, Rasputin's gonna be destructive force on its own, not just for Ukrainian armed forces, but for Russian armed forces also. And this is a quick summary of the situation on the battlefield. I do remind you, by the way, that there are many channels basically that are devoting much more time to detailed discussion of situation on the battlefield, and you can see many of them in my recommendation list under this video in description box. And of course, first of all, I'm talking about military summary, and I'm talking about DPA war, I'm talking about Alexander Merkuris, host of Duran, and highly recommend these channels, by the way. So if we want to learn much in much more detailed situation on the front line, there are channels in my recommendation lists that can provide this additional news. Format of my programs are about news in general, and I cannot devote too much time on discussions on the battlefield. And by the way, before I share with you some additional news that was reported by Russian media, let me note that this project, with several channels on YouTube, on Rumble, on Telegram, exists only thanks to support of members of our community, and I will be immensely grateful if you will also consider to support my work with small donations through PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, or by subscribing to my Patreon page, in which, by the way, I do upload some extra content on regular basis. You can see links under this video in the description box or in the pinned comment. Now let's talk about some other news, and well, I did already report about this information from RIA Novosti that Russian Black Sea Fleet Aviation destroyed several Ukrainian boats in the Black Sea with amphibious force on it. This is not the first time when Ukrainian side is attempting to conduct some landing operation on Crimea, and I guess not the last such operation, but Russian side is controlling, monitoring situation, and well, quite effectively destroying all the Ukrainian plans in this regard. And this incident, by the way, destruction of Ukrainian amphibious boats, I will say, took place not far away from Zmyny Island, infamous Zmyny Island. Let's continue now, and RIA Novosti also reporting that this morning, early hours of this morning, over the Bryansk region was destroyed Ukrainian drone, and by the way, also during the night or early hours today, 8 drones were destroyed. 8 Ukrainian drones also were destroyed in Crimea direction, when Ukrainian side was simultaneously with this amphibious operation were launching drones in the direction of Crimea. Russian air defense systems did work quite well and neutralize all the aerial targets. Next news is very important, of course, very important, because we are talking about ATACMS long-range missiles for HIMARS that can be launched from HIMARS MLRS, multi-launch rocket systems. And according to TASS news agency, White House White House did not deny, basically claims that Biden's administration may send ATACMS missiles to Zelensky and his associates. And I guess at this point it's only a matter of time when these long-range missiles will end up in hands of Ukrainian forces, which is a significant step towards further escalation. And well, I guess Moscow will respond. Moscow will respond on this, and not just on the battlefield in Ukraine, but also in some other areas in this world. And let me share with you my guess, which is if ATACMS will be delivered to Zelensky, then I guess Ukrainian military bases in northern Syria, northwest of Syria, will become in very, very difficult situation. That's my guess, by the way. But I'm quite sure at some point Moscow will begin taking off gloves. It's only a matter of time. And because only so much Moscow can tolerate, by the way. And at some point Moscow will start take off its gloves. And if ATACMS will be delivered to Zelensky, I guess US military bases, Russia will respond not just on the battlefield in Ukraine, but also in some other areas of this world, and Syria may be one of them. And indirectly, of course, I'm not saying that Russian forces will do anything, but Russian forces may not stop other groups that are operating in Syria to take care of US bases. And I don't think Washington gonna like it. But by the way, US military should know that it's a White House, it's a Bidenite White House that is putting lives of US soldiers and officers all around the world under risk. Because officially, if I'm not mistaken, US did not declare war on Russia, but acting like that. So if anyone to blame, it's definitely Biden's White House. Let me continue now, and RT is reporting that, well, as I mentioned during the short summary of the situation on the battlefield, we have many reports. We have many reports that second Challenger 2 tank was destroyed in Ukraine, in Zaporozhye sector of the front line, and well, it's difficult now to say. It's 3 tanks already been destroyed, or 2 tanks, or maybe more. But we have at least 2 video confirmations of 2 destroyed Challenger 2 tanks. And this report is based, as I mentioned, this report of RT is based on statements of Zaporozhye official Vladimir Rogov, if I'm not mistaken. And he's also head of this NGO we are with Russia that are operating in, yes, Vladimir Rogov, that are operating in Zaporozhye region. So, well, as we all, or many of us did, predicted, Challenger 2 tanks, no matter how great those tanks are, and they are, by the way, one of the best tanks that ever was built in this world, they are... they can be destroyed very same way that Leopard 2s or Abrams will be destroyed once they will arrive on the battlefield. And well, London and UK's military-industrial complex, or UK Defense Ministry, gonna get more and more sad news when it comes to Challengers, by the way, in upcoming days. Quite sure about it. And RIA Novosti is also reporting that US, EU, India and Saudi Arabia will create a new economical corridor which will allow these countries to conduct trade in the southern route, to improve communication, trade communication and trade in the southern route between Southeast Asia and Europe. And by the way, of course, we can take this development as some kind of opposite or competitive rule of Chinese Silk Road, which does goes from the northern side, mainly by land, and well, as long as these competitive operations are kept in conducted adequately without aggravating relationships between the countries, then, well, okay, competition is always good. Competition is always good, so I don't see a problem with this development, but China will see definitely. China will see definitely, and to be honest, I'm not quite sure about Saudi Arabia. India, yes, India is of course keen to have a and basically forced at somewhat forced to maintain strategic relationships with Western with states of Western world, because it's difficult relations with China and Pakistan, of course. But when it comes to Saudi Arabia is not forced to do anything whatsoever. It's quite free now and has great relationships with China, with Russia, and well, if it comes to choosing, I guess Riyadh will choose China side of China and Russia. That's my prediction, because it's more safe for Saudi Arabia, simply because it's more safe for Saudi Arabia. And but development is interesting. We did see lately significant activization of Western states in Southeast Asia, in Indo-Pacifics. Just a few days ago, we had reports that UK, for example, very keen to invite in AUKUS military alliance South Korea and Japan, and that alliance AUKUS may be enlarged. And of course, this is a dangerous development, because it's a military alliance of UK, United States, and Australia. And and we did see reports that Western states are really keen to pressure India and some other countries in Southeast Asia to basically distance themselves from Russia and somewhat from China. And now we see this report that some new economical alliance basically will be built between EU, US, India, and Saudi Arabia, which is, as I said, as long as this development will stay in adequate routes and will not aggregate relationships between their countries, it's all good. But will it stay this way? Do we really believe that intentions of Washington and Brussels are purely economical and peaceful? I don't think so. But anyway, let's continue. RIA Novosti is reporting that, well, this is probably you are familiar with this information, that Foreign Minister of Russian Federation Sergei Lavrov did made a statement day before yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, that Russian side did receive information, I guess through intelligence means, that there are some forces in this world unfriendly towards Russia that are planning to destroy Turkish Stream and a Blue Stream gas pipelines that goes on the bottom of Black Sea from Russia to Turkey. And well, after destruction of Nord Stream pipelines, who can say that this is impossible? By the way, it's quite possible, and I guess that's why Russia and Turkey constantly are monitoring these areas where those pipelines are laying on the bottom of the Black Sea with warships, to make sure that these pipelines are safe and secure. But threat is real, in my understanding. Otherwise, Foreign Minister of Russian Federation would not say a word about it. And I could not report about this news yesterday, of course, because I had a day off. Saturday is my day off. So TASS news agency is also reporting that according to Bild, UN is ready to basically fulfill all the Russian demands when it comes to grain deal. And well, according to this information, which I did share, by the way, on my Telegram also, according to this information, one of the financial institutions that will be created by Russian Bank probably will be reconnected with the SWIFT. Russian ships will receive insurance, ships that will transport grain and some other agricultural goods, and also fertilizers. European ports will reopen for Russian ships with same goods. But by the way, well, UN may say whatever they want, or leadership of UN, but will eventually, it all depends on the so-called Western elites, because they have full control over the SWIFT, they have full control over the European ports. Will they agree on this? I have some doubts about it. Because if they were planning to agree on this, they will agree a long time ago, and this grain deal will never stop. But they didn't. So I have some doubts that these announcements from UN will become reality. But let's say maybe so-called Western elites have some change of mind. Who knows? And by the way, this is RIA Novosti's report, according to which official Kiev, Zelensky and his associates are against any sanctions to be lifted from Russia when it comes to grain deal. I don't think Western elites really care about position of Zelensky or his associates. But yet again, if Washington and London, let's say, were planning to obey or fulfill their obligations, or Brussels per se, to fulfill the obligations that are clear in this grain deal, then why should they didn't do so previously, before Russia was forced to end this deal or suspend this deal? So that's why I have some doubts that UN plans will work. But let's see. RT is, by the way, also reporting that during the G20 summit in India, several topics were discussed mainly. And of course, it's Ukraine, it's sustainable growth, climate agenda, of course, climate agenda. Globalists have to push their narrative just everywhere they can, and the multipolar world. By the way, we did not see from G20 summit any anti-Russian statements, and this is mainly thanks to host nation India. Some countries may do some statements on their own, but when it comes to G20 did not come up with any hostile statements towards Russia, which is good. But overall, it was just another gathering of world leaders, nothing extraordinary. Let's say recent BRICS summit was much more important, in my understanding, than G20 summit. Especially with decisions, because we learn from a BRICS summit that this organization will become significantly bigger from the 1st January of 2024. And let's continue. RIA Novosti is reporting that Russia increased significantly its oil exports to Brazil and overtake US in this regard. With the oil, not just crude oil, but we are talking about also oil products. And well, this is quite interesting, because Russian side was forced to find new markets after EU nations, EU states decided to live without Russian energy, or try at least. And I guess Russian companies, Russian state and Russian companies that are working in fields of energy and oil and gas are quite successfully finding these new markets. And by the way, Russian companies are overtaking US in Brazil, by the way, which is quite significant, isn't it? Because after all, US is much closer to Brazil than Russia is. But yet again, let's continue. RIA Novosti is reporting that, de-dollarization of economical relationships between China and Russia continues. That was stated by Russian Foreign Ministry, and according to latest numbers, already up to 80% of trade between Russia and China are done in national currencies or in other currencies, but not in a dollar. Mainly in national currencies. 80%, by the way, which is quite something, isn't it? And that's why I'm saying the dollarization process of the dollarization is will continue. It's unstoppable at this point, and this is basically to be blamed on Washington's policies or Biden's administration's policies, because they use dollar as a weapon, and the entire world did see it. And no one wants to end up in a situation when Washington will use dollar against them. And that's why entire world is shifting towards some other currencies, towards trade with national currencies like Russia and China does. And eventually, I'm quite sure BRICS will come up with its own currency, and BRICS currency will become a third major world reserve currency, together with dollar and the EU, because I don't believe dollar will lose its position as a second as a world currency, world reserve currency. No, of course, it will be world reserve currency like euro, but they will lose their influence. They will have a real competition, and I guess the majority of world will shift towards BRICS currency. And also few more news, by the way. RIA Novosti is reporting that according to Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin, Russian federal budget in August was a had a deficit. So Russian budget received more money than it spent, and we are talking about some 230 billion rubles, by the way. And well, this is quite good news. This is quite good news because if expectation was that Russian budget will be very Russian budget will have a significant deficit because of the Western sanctions and all the issues with in trade between Russia and the Western world. But and it may have some deficit, but at least several months now are definitely indicating that Russian budget is receiving more money than it's spent. So eventually deficit of Russian budget will be much smaller than was expected by experts, because I don't believe Russian budget will manage to avoid having a deficit in year-on-year terms, but deficit will be less than it was predicted. And by the way, according to Mishustin, Russian budget is receiving additional funds because of increasing energy trade, because of significant increase in energy trade. So despite hopes of Western so-called elites, Russia, although lost markets in Europe when it comes to energy did manage to find the new markets in the rest of the world and are making money as usual. And this is going to be last news for today's update. Russian, according to very same Mikhail Mishustin, Prime Minister of Russian Federation, Russian GDP in previous 7 months did increase on 2%. So this is quite also achievement, quite achievement. I remind you that according to some quite optimistic forecast, Russian GDP may grow in 2023 up to 3%. But there are some conservative estimates also that Russian GDP may go from 2 to 2.5%, or maybe even, and most conservative estimate I see is 1.7%. So anyway, Russian economy is growing despite this Western pressure, and growing even by most conservative estimates. Russian economy will grow faster than major, let's say, European economies, which is in current situation definitely can be seen as a significant achievement. And by the way, this is gonna be last news for today's update. Hopefully you will find this video interesting, and if so, please leave some commentary about any topic you like, or just about anything. More likes and comments definitely influence algorithm, as I understand, and thus gives me a chance to reach wider audience. My videos to pop up in recommendations on main page of YouTube. And for very same reason, please share links to my videos or my channel with your friends. If you can, on Facebook, Twitter, Telegram, or any other platform that you are active on. And if you think this channel is interesting, has some potential and useful, please consider to support with small donations through PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, or by subscribing to my Patreon page. You will see links under this video in the description box or in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Have a great day and wonderful and successful upcoming new week. Take care.